That was just one of the greatest years of New Zealand rugby, 2005.
I think that if we can get through this and win these matches and finish the year like that, it's just going to bring us so much confidence.
Since then, South Africa's had one go and Australia's had 3 goes at a slam, and neither of them have been able to do it.
DSPN, the Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
Tony Johnson with us on the DSPN. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for us and leave us a comment as well. We thoroughly appreciate every time that you do get in touch with us. We'll have another mailbag session coming on Friday. This time next week, we're Labour Day, and we're going to be talking about, obviously, just days away from the Grand Slam tour kicking off, Tone, in Chicago. I'm still calling it a Grand Slam, and so are you calling it a Grand Slam, even though we are playing Ireland away from Ireland. Again, people, there is a lot of history to this. The All Blacks tried, couldn't get it done. It was like going to South Africa and winning in 96. That 1978 tour, for those of us who are old enough to remember that, well, you know, my age was just, you know, I remember the 76 tour was the first one, a bitter disappointment at losing that. And then the Lions came to town in 1977 and we beat the Lions 3-1. And that was, as a kid, was just extraordinary because they came and trained at our school. The All Blacks did before that famous first test in Wellington, Grant Batty's intercept and so forth. Then the next year in 1978, when you imagine this, we go South Africa Lions and then a Grand Slam tour, and then 78 we managed to do what we had never been able to do. And then from there we've done it another 3 times. But you've got a lot of history here.
Yeah, well, what makes Grand Slams so special is that you don't get the opportunity that often to do one. And they don't happen very often. So South Africa and the All Blacks have done it 4 times, and we're talking well over 100. You're talking 120 years of trying.
All right.
South Africa and New Zealand 4 times. Australia just once.
84.
Yeah, and what a fantastic
what
team
a side they
that
had,
was,
yeah.
with the Ella brothers and co. And so that proves just how rare they are, and that's what makes them special. But you go back and you look at some of the teams that went over there and tried to do it. 1905, the All Blacks had the first crack at it, and they lost to Wales, very controversially.
Oh, that was
the Bob Dean's try that wasn't, or was it? And it's an interesting one because Ron Polensky, great writer and historian of the game, said if the All Blacks hadn't lost that game, rugby might not quite have been the same. It just set everything up for what was to follow. So the great tour, the originals of 1905, they played Wales late in the piece. Wales were very good. There was a controversial moment. The All Blacks were a very jaded team by that stage. They'd played so many games. So Wales won. Then 1924, Scotland got the huff because in 1905, when they set up a test match against Scotland, they weren't convinced that the All Blacks were box office.
Right.
They hadn't really heard much. Well, they weren't even called the All Blacks probably by then. But they thought, this team from the colonies, no, that we're not going to get a crowd. So they wouldn't guarantee New Zealand a gate. And they said, whatever money the game makes, you keep it. And of course, by the time they got to Scotland, they were famous. Yes. and all of Edinburgh turned up in belief. Watched them play on a skating rink. It was that the ground was frozen, but Scotland was so annoyed about the fact that the All Blacks went away with all this money that they wouldn't play them in 1924. So that was the great, the Invincibles.
That's a long time to keep a grudge, isn't it? It's
only
only 19 years.
Yeah, only 19 years. Yeah. Well, hey, come on, think the underarm. We still hold a grudge. Of
course.
There. Yeah, but look, so 1924, the Invincibles, they beat Ireland, they beat Wales, and they also beat England, but they didn't get to play Scotland, so there was no Grand Slam there. 54, they lost to Wales again. 35, they lost to Wales and England, then to Wales in 54, so they didn't do it. 1963, Wilson Winneray's team looked well capable of it and then played Scotland again on a sodden pitch, torrential rain, and it was a 0-0 draw, and both teams were lucky. Both teams were lucky to get nil.
Yeah. 0-0 draw in a game of Test rugby. Good God, can you imagine it these days? With the outcry if that was the case,
people would be asking for their money
back.
Well,
no, people would be sitting there death scrolling during the game, wouldn't they? Because that's what they do these days.
And then 1967, which was for a long time regarded as perhaps the greatest of all Black teams. Fred Allen's All Blacks went over there and they were denied a Grand Slam because there was an outbreak of foot and mouth disease in Ireland, so they couldn't go to Ireland. Okay. So all of these things kept conspiring, and it wasn't until 1978, as you mentioned, that the All Blacks finally managed to do the Grand Slam. And you think of all the great players that had gone since 1905.
Yeah.
And the thing that we perhaps forget or has been lost in the mists of time was that apart from the England game, which was won with some comfort, the rest of them all went down to the wire.
No, Ireland, Tony, Andy Dalton scored in the last minute off a line-out, wasn't
Correct,
it? You know, and then I remember they said the players dug something into the pitch afterwards late at night after they'd come out of the dressing room and no one was around. I think they buried something there in that corner of the pitch at Lansdowne Road.
It was a line-out. I think Mark Donaldson went. That was 6-all.
It was down the blind. I remember that as clearly.
And remember on the Tuesday they'd lost to Munster.
That's right.
And one or two of the All Blacks thought if they'd beaten Munster, they might not have beaten Ireland.
Right.
Maybe the Munster boys had a bit of a celebration or something. But look, it was still an epic test match.
Yep.
And 6-all right at the end, Andy Dalton scores. Then they go to Wales.
Yeah.
And Andy Hayden viciously thrown out of the line-out by Andy Hayden.
One of the worst fouls in international rugby committed on self.
On self,
ever. But the penalty was awarded with the hand on Frank.
Well, it was Jeff Wheel at the front,
Okay.
But that was another test match that was just so controversial. Everyone talks about what happened at the end. There were a few Hollywoods thrown there too that might have resulted in penalties the other way. So
it was only 1-0. We scored the try. They got 4 goals,
Stu
I remember,
Wilson,
wasn't it?
kick ahead.
And then Brian McKechnie, who, of course, you mentioned the underarm, just involved in 2 of the most controversial episodes in New Zealand sport.
Yep.
He's the guy facing the underarm, and then he's the guy that has to kick that goal to beat Wales.
I think if the story's right, he wasn't even originally named in the squad for the game, and someone pulled out and he came out.
It was actually Clive Curry, wasn't it?
I know Clive Curry got injured during the game. I think was it Mark Donaldson might have got injured.
Right.
I might have that wrong, but he came in, and of course then Clive Curry went up, and it was a challenge. It was in the air, and he came. I think it was a broken jaw, and so on came McKechnie and kicked that winning penalty goal.
And then we went to Twickers, and we considered at the time probably England and Scotland were the 2 easier games, if there is such a thing, which there isn't, because Wales, if you remember at that time, were a powerhouse of world rugby. Yeah. They dominated that Lions squad in 77.
Wales test was always the focal point
it was the
of any Grand Slam. You had to beat Wales.
Yeah.
It always would hinge on that. So England, not in such a great state, so the All Blacks won that with a degree of comfort. Then they went to Murrayfield. And I can remember talking to the late Gary Sear about it. He went for a walk in the afternoon about match time on the Friday, and he thinks it's dark. I can't see anything. And so the game descended.
There are no floodlights, people. Okay,
it descended into darkness.
Yeah,
and so much at the end where Ian McGeechan had a drop kick at goal, I think, to level the scores, and it got charged down by Doug Bruce and towed ahead, and there was a race for the ball, and you couldn't quite tell who it was, and in the end it was Bruce Robertson who scored it. Brian Williams, who by his own admission had a bit of a shocker in that game, Graham Murray came up to him and goes, "Well done, all is forgiven." I didn't score the try. So that was the Grand Slam.
Then we played Cardiff afterwards.
There was a Barbarians game.
We went back to Cardiff, and I remember Eddie Dunn drop kicked a goal, and we won that game.
And so you think of the 4 test matches and the Barbarians game. Everything apart from the England game was decided in that magical 80th minute or 80 plus. Didn't get another chance since till 2005, and that's the one that probably I remember the most because there was just so much going on.
So that's another 17 years we waited.
Yeah.
Wow.
Without a chance to do it.
If you'd asked me, I just would have thought, we would have had a crack doing because Australia did it in 84. I'm sure. I thought we must have had another go at some stage, but no.
There'd be tours. I think one time, a couple of times they went and played England and Scotland. One time, there's another time they went and played Ireland, or they played in France or whatever.
Yeah,
but this, it was 2005, and of course we'd had the Lions tour earlier on in the year, and that was just one of the greatest years of New Zealand rugby. 2005, that tour. Look, it all came down to the England test. Wales first, then Ireland, and Graham Henry was able to completely change his team out for those two test matches and win them. But it came down to England, and the All Blacks 3 yellow cards in the second half. After they'd set up a really great try early on in the game, they kind of you felt that control of the game was ebbing away, but somehow or other they managed to hang on and then went to Scotland and completed their first Grand Slam since 1978. Then it became it started getting a bit regular. They went back in 2008.
Did it again?
Comfortably that time. I think they beat England, put 30 points on England. I think the closest margin was 22-3 against Ireland. So they did that.
That is comfortable.
Well, that was an All Black team that sort of the year after the
debacle in the World Cup. Yeah.
And then again, 2010, pretty comfortable. That followed on from the loss in Hong Kong to Australia. They went over there.
Stephen Donald. That's where the whole Stephen Donald thing started. So, okay. See,
and that was also included a game, that tour against Munster, because it was the anniversary of that game back in 1978. And halfway through that game, some of the All Blacks were thinking, boy, they're going to be writing a play about us too if we don't get our act together.
Mm-hmm.
So they not only won the Grand Slam, but they also won that midweek game at Thomond Park.
Isn't that great how everyone in Ireland was at that Munster game as well? That's just one of those great rugby stories, isn't it? Like, it only held 12,000 people in the ground. And the other thing is this is back in 78, people, there's so little footage of it.
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, in those days, the midweek games, they just had a couple of guys with a handheld camera, didn't they? That was pretty much it.
I do remember there was a great shot of Moss Keane being carried off the field in triumph. That was a great moment and a great career of his. So, but when they did it in 2010, people started going, you know, typical New Zealand style, oh, this is getting
too easy.
We're doing it too often. And so we haven't done it since. This is the first.
So this is another 15-year wait?
Yeah. Since then, South Africa's had one go, and Australia's had 3 goes at a slam, and neither of them have been able to do it.
Okay.
So I get back to the point that apart from that time between 2005, 2010, when there were 3 shots at it from the All Blacks, they don't come up that often, the opportunities. And to actually do it, you understand now why it's rare. New Zealand 4, South Africa 4, Australia 1, 9 times in over 120 years of rugby history.
Right. Great stats.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And so here we look forward to.
Oh, for sure.
As I say, it's only a couple of Saturdays away. We're back into international rugby, and it's consecutive weekends again. And, you know, an All Black side with, a hell of a lot to prove. But at the same time, an All Black side, I think that if we can get through this and win these matches and finish the year like that, it's just going to bring us so much confidence. And you know, I get a lot of comments about it's not going to, you know, help ease the whatever happened in Wellington, and I get that. But you've also got to look that way in sport, and you have a chance to redeem yourself. And this is a really big chance for these same players to achieve something that, as you say, has been achieved so rarely in the past.
Well, they're on the road together, which is always something that, and traditionally All Black teams tended to do well, to tour well together. They start in Ireland. Ireland have got, we can talk about this next week.
Yeah, we will.
We'll keep our powder dry, but they've got a few injury concerns. I just get a little bit uncomfortable people assuming a win over Scotland. Because as I said last week, any team that's got Finn Russell in it, the form that he's in at the moment, has to be taken
And they'll be looking at us thinking
seriously.
that they've waited over 100 years like Argentina did and like Ireland did, and it's about time that they had theirs.
So this year it goes Ireland, Scotland, England, Wales last. And David Gallagher came back from the tour in 1995 and said, never play Wales last again, but they're going to do it this time. Who knows whether there's a slam in the offing? It could be. I'm with you. I think, okay, it's on neutral ground, the first one, but to me it would still constitute a Grand Slam.
I think so.
People can disagree with that. Absolutely happy for people to take another viewpoint. Of course, let's do that. Give us your thoughts, folks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Quite happy if you don't think that's the case. You could put up a case that the All Blacks did the Grand Slam in 1995 in South Africa, where they played Ireland and Wales in the pool, then Scotland in the semi-final, and of course that memorable game against England, Scotland in the quarter and England in the semi-final. So you could argue.
And I think those were back-to-back games as well, weren't they?
Not quite. No, there was.
I
think Japan got
it.
That's right. In the middle of it as well.
145 points,
something like that. Yeah. Mark Ellis. Yeah. So, doesn't come around very often, and achieved even less.
Leave us a comment all about this, people. Love the engagement. Thank you so much.
DSPN.